Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of economics class. Today our topic is changes in demand from section 2. My name is Ahmad Shamoon and I am from Hirilandu School. So our learning intentions for this lesson by the end of this lesson, students should be able to state and illustrate changes in demand, identify the causes of shifts in demand. And I would be successful if I state the changes in demand, illustrate the changes in demand, identify the causes of shifts in demand. So this is the very first moment or change in demand, that is movement along the demand curve. And here we have a downward sloping demand curve. Now, for example, if the price is 4 and the quantity demanded is 8, when the price falls to 3, the quantity demanded increases from 8 to 12. And furthermore, when the price decreases from 3 to 2, the quantity demanded increases from 12 to 16. Now you can see a trend, right? When there is a fall in price, there is an increase in quantity demanded. This change is called extension in demand. So extension in demand refers when there is a fall in the price, there will be an increase in quantity demanded. In the case of the other type, under movement along the demand curve, again we have downward sloping demand curve from left to right. And for example, you can see when the price is 2, the quantity demanded is 16. And when the price moves from 2 to 3, that means when the price increases from 2 to 3, the quantity demanded falls from 16 to 12. And furthermore, when the price increases from 3 to 4, again the quantity demanded falls from 12 to 8. Now, in this diagram, it is illustrating that when there is an increase in the price, it causes a fall in quantity demanded. So this change is called contraction in demand. Once again, when the price increases, when there is an increase in the price, it causes a fall in quantity demanded. This is called contraction in demand. Moving on to the shifts in demand curve. Now, in the previous slides, we learned that movement along the demand curve is caused by the price, which causes either extension or contraction in demand. And shifts in demand curve, they are caused by the non-price factors mentioned here in this slide. It shows that the income, price, advertisement, tastes, population, and expectations. So before moving on to the detailed explanation of these factors, we will see how the shifts in demand curve is illustrated. This is the initial demand curve, and always remember that when there is an increase in demand, it causes the demand curve to shift to the right. That means when the demand curve shifts to the right, or if it causes outward shift, it is called increase in demand. Once again, when the demand curve shifts to the right, or when the demand curve shifts outward, it is called increase in demand. And when the demand curve shifts inward or left side, it is called decrease in demand. These are the key points you have to remember, because when you explain regarding increase in demand and decrease in demand, you can use these terms: shift to the right or outward, shift inward or shift to the left. We are moving to the factors affecting changes in demand now. There are actually a lot of factors that will affect the changes in demand, but in order for you to learn, 7 of the factors would be more than enough. So we will be discussing about the key 7 factors that bring changes in demand. Now, the very first factor is price of goods. Now, at the very beginning of the presentation, we discussed about type of change, that is extension and contraction in demand. Actually, the change in price would not shift the demand curve as we discussed earlier, and it causes extension and contraction in demand. Uh, just to remind, extension in demand causes when there is a fall in price that causes an increase in quantity demanded, and contraction on the opposite when it occurs when an increase in price, when price increases, the quantity demanded falls. That is called contraction in demand. This is the very first factor that causes shifts in demand, that is income of the consumers. Now, an increase in income raises the consumers' purchasing power. For most of the products, this results in an increase in demand. In fact, so common is this positive relationship between income and demand that such products are referred as normal goods. Now, when income increases, people tend to buy more goods and services. Those types of products or goods are called normal goods. And goods which have negative relationship, which means when income increases, the demand for such goods fall. So those types of products are called inferior goods. Now, if we consider the cheap cars, for example, now the income we earn, based on this, we tend to buy cars and other products also. But once our income increases, we rush to buy expensive cars. So that means when income increases, the demand for cheaper cars falls. So those types of products are called inferior goods. The second factor is price of related goods. Now, an increase in demand can be caused by rising the price of substitute product. When the price of one substitute good increases, for example, the demand for the other also increases. Now, the movement of price of one product and the movement of demand of the other product, substitute product, they have a positive relationship. When price increases, the demand for the other also increases. As an example, we have car and bicycle. Now, if the price of car increases, people tend to buy less cars. Like the law of demand says, other things being equal, more will be demanded at lower price. So when price of car increases, people tend to leave cars and instead they shift to the substitute of car, that is, for example, bicycle. Now, the demand for bicycle increases due to an increase in the price of cars. Unlike substitute goods, complementary goods are jointly demanded goods. That means the use of one product will be incomplete without the other. Here we have a good example of car and petrol. Now, without the use of petrol, cars won't work, right? And it's the opposite in case of petrol and car again. If cars are not demanded, petrol won't be also demanded, for example. So if the price of car increases, let's go back to the law of demand once again. Other things being equal, more will be demanded at lower price. So if the price of car increases, the demand for cars naturally falls. So with the car, petrol is used. So if there is no demand for the car, the demand for the petrol will fall. So this is how it works. In complementary goods, when the price of one product increases, the demand for the other falls. So they work in an opposite direction. So the next factor is expectation of future price changes. Expectations about future price rises can also influence current demand. Now, for example, if we expect there is an increase in price in the near future, let's have a very practical example. For example, when Corona pandemic hit the world, people in different countries, they rushed to shops and did impulse buying. What do you think it is? Yes, because people expected a havoc in international trade, and this might cause a rapid increase in price of goods in future. So that's why people bought a lot of goods, mostly, for example, the safety products. So that causes an increase in demand for an increase in the current demand for goods and services. The next factor is tastes and fashion of consumers. Now, certain products, it is particularly influenced by the changes in tastes and fashion. You or other people, we tend to buy products of our own preference, and this happens in the case of fashion also. Different people like different fashions. Mostly people buy what the current trend shows. So this includes food, cloth, and entertainment products. A rise in vegetarianism, for example, in a number of countries has caused the demand for meat to decrease. So when people tend to demand vegetables, and if the health reports, for example, says eating vegetables are too healthy than eating meat, people tend to buy more vegetables than meat. So health reports also, it can have a significant influence on demand for particular type of foods. And regarding designer trainers have become more popular in many countries, and the rise in the popularity of football in Asia and Africa has increased the demand for football shirts and football merchandise. Now we have a habit of comparing football players, right? So we usually compare with the top players such as Messi and Ronaldo. So if I support Messi, I buy Messi's jerseys. If I support Ronaldo, I prefer buying Ronaldo's jerseys. So that depends on the taste and fashion of the consumers. Here we have a weapon of most of the businesses, the advertisement. A successful advertising campaign will increase the demand for a product. For example, it may bring the product to notice of some consumers when advertisement is done. If there are people who are unaware of the product, it tend to increase the awareness regarding the product, and it may encourage some existing consumers to buy more quantities of that product. Okay, here we have a very fun fact. Now, according to the YouTube analysis, Amazon's, you know Amazon, right? Amazon's Not Everything Makes the Cut. The Amazon Super Bowl L3 commercial, it has topped the ranking, and it is the most watched advertisement in 2019 with 39.5 million views. So I'm pretty sure that we are not surprised to know the world's richest person is the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Last but not the least, population also plays an important role in bringing changes to demand. In short, an increase in population usually increases the demand. A fall in population usually falls the demand for most of the goods and services. It depends on both size and age composition. For example, if there is an increase in the number of people in a country, the demand for most of the products will increase. If there is an aging population, people tend to live longer. There will be an increase in the demand for wheelchairs. But if there is an increase in, if there is a decrease in birth rate, number of children will fall, right? So if number of children falls, the demand for toys are likely to decrease. Now, in the case of a classroom, for example, it's quite logical also. When there are 10 students in a class, they are required 10 chairs and 10 desks. But if the number increases to 20 or 25, there's a need to buy more chairs and more desks because they need to satisfy their wants. So population is a very important factor that brings changes. And in the case of business, when people tend to invest in businesses, they look for the population size also. So it plays an important role in bringing changes to demand. Okay, there are other factors that also affect the demand, as mentioned at the very beginning of the explanation of factors. One of the factors is weather conditions. Actually, weather conditions also play an important role in demand. For example, during a sunny season, people tend to demand for cold items like ice creams, ice cones, and umbrellas too. And if there is a rainy season also, people tend to demand for umbrellas and raincoats. Furthermore, in some of the countries where it causes winter, they demand for hot items And here in our country also we used to drink hot teas, right, during the cool weather. So this is also one of the factors that affect demand. Summarize what we have learned today. Now we learned the changes in demand, that is movement along the demand curve and movement of the demand curve, or shifts in demand curve. And we also learned the changes under each type of movement, that is under the movement along the demand curve we learned extension in demand and contraction in demand. Now in the case of extension, when the price falls, quantity demanded also increases, quantity demanded increases, so that is called extension in demand. When the price increases, on the other hand, the quantity demanded falls, that is called contraction in demand. And we learned a number of factors that causes changes and shifts in demand. One is price of the product. Now when there is a change in the price, it does not shift the demand curve, rather it brings extension or contraction in demand. And the very first factor we learned that shifts the demand curve is income of the consumers. So if there is an increase in the income, the demand for most of the goods and services will increase. But there are certain types of products, they are called inferior goods. If the income increases, the demand for certain goods will not increase. And the example we learned was regarding cheap cars, right? And then we learned about price of related goods, and that is regarding substitute goods and complementary goods. So if there is an increase in the price of one substitute, for example, the example we learned was car and bicycle, right? So if the price of car increases, the demand for car falls naturally, and people tend to shift to its alternative, that is a bicycle. So people demand more bicycles. Therefore, when there is an increase in the price of the car, the demand for bicycles and other alternatives also increase. And regarding the complementary goods, they are jointly demanded goods. So when there is a fall in the price of one product, for example, if there is a fall in the price of cars, people naturally will buy more cars, right? So with that, their demand for the petrol, so the demand for petrol increases. So in the case of complementary goods, this works, price and demand works the opposite way. And then we learned about the expectation. If there is if people expect that there might be an increase in if people expect there might be an increase in the price in the near future, they tend to buy goods and services now. So the demand for the current demand for goods and services will increase. And the example we learned was regarding the corona pandemic. And the next factor was tastes and fashion. We tend to buy goods and services that depends on our tastes and fashion. And what is current trend is what people usually demand, right? And in the case of tastes, the example we took was regarding football and many other examples. But for example, in football, we tend to compare football players and we usually buy their jerseys. So we usually buy goods on our tastes. And regarding the advertisement, just like I have mentioned previously, advertisement is the weapon of businesses. So what they do with that is when the advertisement becomes successful, or when they make a good advertisement, the people who are unaware about the product will come to know about it via people or via other medias. And those people who already those people who are aware about the product, they tend to buy more goods. And the example we took was regarding the Amazon's advertisement, right? The Jeff Bezos advertisement. And regarding population, what we have learned was if there is an increase in population, the demand for goods and services increases, and if population falls, the demand for goods and services also falls with it. And it depends on the age and size of the population. And if, for example, if there is an increase in the aging population, if there is an increase in the number of old people in a population, the demand for wheelchairs, healthcare facilities, retirement, let's say old age homes will be increased. The demand for those things will be increased. And if there's an increase in birth rate, there will be an increase in children, right? Number of children will increase. With that, the demand for toys also will increase. So it depends on the age composition also. And this is all we have learned today so far in this lesson, and I hope we'll meet once again with a brand new topic. So this is it. Be safe, wash your hands often, and care for the loved ones. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. So thank you very much. Have a good day.